Hello everybody, my name is Star Wars Boy, how are you? And welcome back to the channel for a brand new video. In this video, we are going to be going over the reinforcements that we would love to see in a Battlefront 3. Now, 2020 has been a bad year for Star Wars games. Battlefront 2 was cancelled just as it was meeting potential, and the LEGO Star Wars game has been postponed so many times. On top of that, the only Star Wars game we did get this year was Star Wars Squadrons, which is a game that doesn't even satisfy the entire community, as it's just a game about flying. Compare this to 2019, which was a massive year for Star Wars, as we got Jedi Fallen Order, one of the best single-player games that I've ever played, the conclusion to the Skywalker saga, The Mandalorian, and the redemption of Battlefront 2. This video is just for fun, as we need some brand new content for this channel. Also, Battlefront 3 is coming in no way. We don't know anything about it other than that Battlefront 2 was cancelled so the devs can work on a Battlefield 6, which is non-Star Wars related. Also, only a small percentage of viewers are actually subscribed, so if you do enjoy this video, be sure to subscribe. It's completely free and helps out the channel. Anyways, let's get started. So I'm going to be dividing this video into 3 parts. First, we will look at Clone Wars reinforcements, then the Galactic Civil War reinforcements, and finally reinforcements from the sequel trilogy. The first reinforcement that I have on my mind is the Clone Marines for the Republic. These guys were really cool in Battlefront 2005. They had a machine gun and were really unique. Another reinforcement that I think would be really good for the Republic is the clone Paratroopers. We see these guys in Revenge of the Sith and throughout the Clone Wars, and whether you want them as a skin for the Republic, I think that they would do really good as a unique reinforcement, and DICE can definitely mess around with their abilities. As for a reinforcement that I guarantee everyone wants to see is the Magna Guard. We got these guys in Battlefront 2005, however they are nothing compared to what they are in the Clone Wars. In the original Battlefront 2, they had a Geonosian pistol and had no trace of an electro staff. However, I really think that DICE can bring these guys into a Battlefront 3 with their Electro Staff as an ability or even as their primary weapon. We see these guys also use rocket launchers, so these guys would just be a really fun reinforcement, as those two are a pretty interesting combination. Now, I honestly thought that these guys would come alongside Geonosians, but obviously they didn't. Another reinforcement that I think would be really good to have with this Separatist alliance is Sniper Droidicus. There was actually a recent mod that brought this to life with the NT242. However, I really think that these guys would be awesome to have. Currently in Battlefront 2, we have 0 reinforcements with snipers, and this would change that up. On top of that, barely anyone has a sniper rifle in Battlefront 2 other than Bosk and the Specialist. Now moving on, I think a great reinforcement to counter the Separatist Magna Guard would be the Jedi Temple Guard and Senate Guards. And yes, these are 2 separate reinforcements. The Jedi Temple Guards have to be one of the greatest inclusions to canon, as they just look super cool. They have different colored lightsabers that we never really saw, and they have a dual-bladed lightsaber. Plus, they say halt, and that's cool. These guys would be really cool to have, and yes, they would have a lightsaber as a reinforcement, however the damage would be tuned down to make this balanced. The Senate Guards would also be really cool to see, as their blue armor makes them stand out a lot. I also really like the top of their helmets, and they do have a big role in Clone Wars episodes protecting Palpatine. These guys would make a major inclusion into the game, and I think that their pikes would be a really cool primary ability. Finally, for the Clone Wars, we have Geonosians. These guys were in the original Battlefront 2, and they were insane, as you could fly really high with them, and they had those really funky blasters. Now again, I really thought these guys would come along with the Geonosis update, however they didn't. Now, one thing I want to clarify is that these guys would only be available for Geonosis. I think that it's really weird seeing Ewoks on Hoth and Tatooine, and that's exactly why I would only want to see Geonosians on Geonosis, as seeing them on Kamino would be really weird. Another reinforcement that I would love to see, and I'm so happy it's finally a mod, but it's the Clone Flame Trooper. We see these on Geonosians in the Clone Wars, and there's not much about them to say. They are Clone Flame Troopers. I think they were undercut because of the First Order Flame Trooper and how recent it was compared to the Clone Flame Trooper. However, I'm so happy that these guys have a mod, and I'm definitely going to be playing them offline. These guys would make an excellent inclusion into the game, and more Flame Troopers would be really cool, as they're a great reinforcement. Now, an honorable mention is the tactical droid for the Separatists. These guys are majorly included into Clone Wars and actually have two variations. These guys technically are in Battlefront 2, however, he only makes a cameo as an announcer for the Separatists, and if your game glitches, for the Empire. However, I think that these guys would be really funky reinforcements. I always liked their look, and I think that they just looked really cool and would be really fun to see on battle. Like, imagine they had similar abilities to an officer and would be able to boost your teammates. That would be a great inclusion. Now, moving on to the original trilogy, Galactic Civil War, we have two reinforcements that I honestly thought were coming in March, and I'd love to see in a Battlefront 3. I am, of course, talking about the Bothan Spies and Shadow Troopers. One thing these guys have in common is the fact that they both have the ability to go invisible. In Battlefront 2015, when playing survival, you actually went up against Imperial Shadow Troopers, and they had really deadly blasters and had the ability to go invisible. However, you did see their outlines, so you could deal damage to them. The Bothan Spies were for the Rebellion in Battlefront 2 2005 and had a similar ability with a very funky gun. These guys are the definition of infiltrators. They can go invisible. What more do you want? These guys would really spice up the playstyle, especially compared to the boring reinforcements we have for the Age of Rebellion and original trilogy now. These guys would make the game so much more fun in a Battlefront 3. Now, just like the clones, the Empire does have a lot of more reinforcement options. The first one that comes to my mind is the Shock Trooper. These guys had a lot more health in Battlefront 2015 and had really heavy weaponry. Honestly, these guys would be really cool to see, as they could have a sentry ability or something similar to that. The next reinforcement that I'd love to see for the Empire are Purge Troopers. These guys were really cool in Fallen Order and were actually pretty hard to take down. They do have really powerful blasters and have a really cool melee staff that I think would make a really cool ability. These guys were also resistant to force powers, which I think is a really interesting ability or even perk that I think would be really cool to see in a Battlefront 3. Speaking of reinforcements from Jedi Fallen Order, I think a great inclusion to a Battlefront 3 would be the KX Security Droid, also known as K2SO. These guys are just really freaky and honestly look really cool. In Jedi Fallen Order, they're also a real pain to take down, as they can hit you in the head and deal massive amounts of damage just by grabbing you. I think by giving these guys a blaster and really powerful melees, these guys would be an amazing reinforcement to fight with on the battlefield. Now, probably the most requested reinforcement for the Empire is, of course, the Royal Guards. The thing that upsets me is the fact that these guys were technically reinforcements in Battlefront 2015. They actually did spawn on Palpatine ever since the Bespin update. Before the Bespin DLC, Palpatine had Shock Troopers, which really didn't feel the same as the Royal Guards. In Battlefront 2015, these guys had the T-21. However, Battlefront 3 could easily give these guys Force Pikes, or the T-21. The Force Pikes would be a really interesting ability, or if it was a primary weapon, I think it would be really cool. Plus, the Royal Guards are just really funky and creepy looking, and I think that they would be an amazing inclusion to have. Now, as for the final reinforcement for the Galactic Empire, I honestly think that the Incinerator Troopers would just be really cool to see. Now, these guys were in The Mandalorian and had a big part in threatening the Mandalorian and almost killing him if Baby Yoda didn't step in with his Force powers. Now these guys, again, just like the clone flame trooper, would be amazing to see on the battlefront. They are ridiculously cool and have a really cool paint job on their armor. Plus, it's a flame trooper that shoots fire. What can you not ask for? Now, as for the Rebellion, I'd be really keen to see the Rebel Honor Guards come into the game. These guys, again, were in Battlefront 2015, and they had a really cool blaster, which I don't think is in Battlefront 2. In case you don't know what I'm wondering about, it's 9 Num's blaster from Battlefront 2015. It's a really satisfying blaster to use, and although I do prefer the SE-44C, I do really like this blaster, and I'd love to have it included in a Battlefront 3 somehow. You could give these guys really unique abilities, such as an astromech droid or a shield, and I think that they play really well. The second reinforcement for the Rebellion would be the Rebel Pilot. These guys were actually supposed to be added somehow in Battlefront 2, and there's actually footage of someone making a concept Rebel Pilot for Battlefront 2. However, of course, it didn't make it into the game. He had a blurg, which I think is a really unused weapon in Battlefront 2, and I think I'd really be able to see it in a Battlefront 3. They also had an astromech droid, which I think we really need to see in a Battlefront 3. You can give these guys back-to-bombs and make them really help their team. Overall, the Rebellion doesn't have nearly as many options as the Empire, however, you can always make something up. Now, finishing off with the sequel trilogy, there are not nearly as many options as the Empire or the clones. However, there still are some pretty cool reinforcements that I would love to see added. The first one is the Praetorian Guards. These guys were heavily advertised in The Last Jedi, and the fact that they were not added in The Last Jedi DLC really confused me. I know that the game was in a pretty bad state, however, it was said that they had the Last Jedi DLC ready to go by the launch of the game, but they just decided to postpone it for The Last Jedi movie. So these guys being added to a Battlefront 3 would be really cool. We are shown that they are skilled in various different types of weapons, and they actually have 2 different appearances, which we see. These guys honestly would just be really cool to see, as they look a lot like the Senate Guards and Palpatine's Royal Guards. However, they're a lot more deadly as far as we know. Next up, we have the First Order Executioner. These guys were added in The Last Jedi, and they didn't do much. However, they look really cool, and I'd love to see them added in a Battlefront 3. They have a really weird and funky weapon, which I think would be great to see in a Battlefront game. I mean, come on, they're Executioner Troopers. What more do you want? I think for their melee to work, they'd have to have a really cool animation for it, and a unique one, which no one else has. Another similar trooper which I'd love to see is the First Order Riot Trooper. You could give these guys a shield and their electro staff, and I think it'd be great. One of these guys took on Finn in The Force Awakens and completely demolished him if it weren't for Han's help. These guys are really skilled, and I think giving them a shield would just be really cool. And on my mind, I think that giving these guys the ISB agents animations for running and melee would just be really cool with these guys. So that is gonna do it for this video, guys. I had a really hard time coming up with some reinforcements. Now I actually rewatched some Clone Wars to see what reinforcements I could add, and these are the ones I came up with. Again, obviously Battlefront 3 is nowhere in production as far as we know. This was just a little fun that I had because there's not much going around with Star Wars games at the moment. I don't plan on making Star Wars Squadrons, so right now it's just Battlefront 3 concepts and Battlefront 2 videos. If you did enjoy the video and you want to see more of these kinds of videos, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. See you guys next time, bye, and may the Force be with you always.